What's up, Kings? And the word Kings is actually really relevant today because the topic for today's video is Stoicism and how one could apply Stoicism and a Stoic daily routine in modern society. And one of the great proponents and practitioners of the Stoic philosophy was Marcus Aurelius, who is known as the Philosopher King. Marcus Aurelius was one of the most interesting people in history with regards to the fact that he had access to every luxury at the time. In fact, there was probably not a single person alive in his era, in his part of the world, with as much affluence as him. He was the single most powerful person in the world. And yet, he lived a life of such staunch discipline, such pared down living, and his only preoccupation was not enjoyment of pleasure, but rather just honoring his internal compass, his internal philosophy. He was one of the most service-oriented leaders of his time, when every predecessor before him was reveling with sex slaves and drinking lots of wine, and everyone after him was of the same mindset, really ravishing the pleasures of Roman society. And yet Marcus Aurelius really stood as this paradigm, quintessential man who had a real regality in his execution and a real morality to his actions. The philosophy that he really brought to light was the Stoic philosophy. The essence of the Stoic philosophy is simply to not be preoccupied, not be caught up by the things that are not in our control. It is a basic human tendency to try to control our surroundings, but the Stoic philosophy says that our need to control everything is what causes us anxiety, is what causes us depression. The Stoic has a really great sense of what is within their locus of control and what is outside of it. The Stoic argues that the things that are within our control, our own voluntary thoughts and actions, should be carried out in a very rational way that follows our own internal nature. Those things that are outside of our control should be accepted as fated by the divine strings of the universe, as if they were the will of God. Following nature in this way allows the Stoic to live a life of freedom, fearlessness, overcoming irrational fear and desire, not having much distress in your life, and overall living with a general flow of life. Reading Marcus Aurelius's book, Meditations, which was never meant to be published, was an incredibly insightful look into the man and the way he practiced Stoicism. And so I want to quickly go over 5 tactics, 5 daily disciplines by which a person could enact Stoicism in their own life. And having a Stoic sense of conducting yourself, I think, could be really, really useful to the artists and the entrepreneurs, because it is very healthy for an artist or an entrepreneur to identify the things that are within their locus of control and the things that are outside of them, because then you no longer blame yourself or have distress about the things that don't work out for you, because your entire preoccupation is simply focusing on the things that are within your locus of control. And it's just a very efficient, mentally efficient, and powerful way to move forward, to conduct yourself, and to go about your life's work. So here are the 5 habits. The first is meditation. Now, I've talked about meditation in so many videos, but the Stoic conception of meditation is a little more intriguing in the sense that the Stoics are quite ready, willing, and inspired to meditate on death. There is a phrase within the Stoic philosophy known as Memento Mori. Remember that you will die. And actually, in one of my earliest videos, I talked about Memento Mori and how when Roman generals would come home from victories after great contests, great crusades, and would be receiving the accolades of the crowd, they would actually have someone nearby who would be whispering in their ear, Memento Mori. Remember that you will die. Not so much in a way to make them feel distressed about their life or the fact that nothing mattered, but rather to help them keep perspective on the things that should really matter to them, which were their internal principles. And just to acknowledge that the accolades of the crowd, well, it's temporary. You know, we can't really count on fame or infamy, either sides of the coin. Really, what the only thing that we can control is our conduct. And so this idea of remembering death really grounds you, and in addition to grounding a person, it provides an air of freedom. The conception of Memento Mori was captured really well in the movie Fight Club. In that movie, Tyler Durden, in one of the middle scenes, it's an incredible scene. He gives a kiss on the narrator's hand, and then he says, "This is a chemical burn," when he puts lie on his hand. And so the narrator is like shrieking in agony, and he says, "Please get rid of this." But at some point in the middle of this incredible like monologue, Tyler Durden says to him, "First, you need to know, not fear, know that one day you're gonna die. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything," is what he says to the narrator. And so Edward Norton's character finally like finds his equilibrium even in the midst of all this pain, and then he's liberated from that chemical burn. Steve Jobs also sort of practiced this. He said in a commencement speech once that every day when he would wake up, he would look into the mirror and he would ask himself,
"If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today?"
He said that if he went too many days without saying yes to that question, then he knew he had to change something very fast. So the first habit is to meditate, to look inwards and find your inner knowledge, but also meditate on death just a little bit each day. But not so much the fact that it should be like a negative conception. Meditate on death so that you can find freedom in the actions you take in life. That's the first principle. Meditate on Memento Mori. Remember, you will die. The second discipline that you can enact to have a Stoic daily discipline, a Stoic daily routine, is to mentally rehearse the activities of your day, and specifically mentally rehearse the challenges that you might face over the course of that day and how you would go about overcoming them. You know, I'm a big believer in the law of attraction, and especially with mental rehearsal, it's been documented numerous times that athletes perform better when they mentally rehearse an event. And the same goes with doing a business pitch or performing musically on anything. But the Stoic might mentally rehearse for the trials and the tribulations that they might end up facing over the course of their day. Here's what Marcus Aurelius said in his journalings. He said, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but the same mind, and possessing a share of the divine. And so none of them can hurt me. No one can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I feel angry at my relative or hate him. We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like two rows of teeth, upper and lower. To obstruct each other is unnatural. To feel anger at someone, to turn your back on him, these are obstructions." So essentially, I really think a great discipline to enact in your life, both with regards to mentally rehearsing the things you want to accomplish that day, but also with the Stoic mindset in mind to mentally rehearse the things you might face as challenges over the course of that day and how you might end up overcoming them. When you end up facing those challenges, it's really strange. You end up being really ready for them and calm in the midst of them. The third principle as part of one's daily Stoic routine is that of daily ethical mindfulness, which is simply to say being extremely present of the here and now as you go about your day's business. The Romans had a word for this. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but I believe it's prosoche, or prosohe, which essentially means paying attention. It also means to remind oneself that pretty much every activity that we participate in has an ethical dimension, from the clothes we buy, where we shop for our groceries, where we go for banking. It all has an ethical dimension of it. And so the Stoic is really present in their day-to-day activity, and they do their best to stay away from thinking about the past or ruminating about the future, but very impeccably, very tactically staying here and going about your business in what you perceive to be the most ethical way possible. And one way that I found really helps me stay present as I go about my business is to keep my phone on silent and then just to stay with my breath as I'm working. It also helps me tap into deep work more and more, just to not be looking at my phone and to stay with my breath as I'm typing a memo or whatever it is I'm doing. Marcus Aurelius puts this concept of daily ethical mindfulness in a really masculine, powerful way. Here's how he says this. He says, "Let this be your steadfast purpose, to act continually in all affairs as becomes to a Roman and a man, with true unaffected dignity, kindness of heart, freedom and justice, and disentangle your soul from all other solicitudes. You shall thus disentangle yourself if you perform each action as if it were your last, without temerity or any passionate aversion to what reason approves. If a man observes these things, the gods require no more of him." The fourth principle is that of keeping an evening philosophical diary. This isn't something that I actually do yet, but journaling is sort of the next habit that I'm working on implementing and daily, or at least weekly, having as part of my life. And so many of the Stoics were daily journalers. Of course, Marcus Aurelius, his book Meditations, that was written just for himself. These were conversations that he was having with himself just to remind himself of what he really believed in. But Seneca and Sextius, other Stoic philosophers, also argued about the benefits of daily journaling. And they said that you could go about journaling answering 3 questions. What done amiss? What have I done wrong this day? You should figure out what actions you made were mistakes over the course of that day, and then condemn the actions. Don't condemn yourself as the individual, but condemn the actions. Secondly, you should do what done. What did I accomplish? What virtuous activities did I enact today? And what did I do right, basically? And the third is what missed. What done amiss? Basically capturing all the things that you feel you should have done or could have done that would have been proper conduct for you, but you didn't. I was really surprised to find that Tom Hanks, an actor that I've really admired all my life, is also a practitioner of this philosophical diary. He had said in one of his earlier interviews, I believe maybe with Playboy magazine actually, he said that every day he tracks, at the end of the day, he tracks everything that he did wrong that day. He likes to keep account of all the things he did wrong so he could be mindful of them of the next day. And I think that's like a really humble and emboldening way to proceed with your work. And keeping a philosophical diary in which you track the things you did wrong, the things you did right, and the things you missed helps you enact another principle known as Kaizen. Kaizen, which means daily incremental improvements. Kaizen is a philosophy that allowed the Japanese automobile business to really outrank the Americans, and they simply adopted the mindset of getting incrementally, very minutely better every single day, improving their process. And keeping a journal for the individual is a way of growing 1% every single day, and this pays enormous dividends over the course of a lifetime. Sextius and Seneca put it this way: the spirit ought to be brought up for examination daily. What bad habit of yours have you cured today? What vice have you checked? In what respect are you better? How sweet the sleep which follows this self-examination. How calm, how sound, and careless it is when our spirit has either received praise or reprimand, and when our secret inquisitor and censor has made his report about our morals. I make use of this privilege and daily plead my cause before myself. When the lamp is taken out of my sight, and my wife, who knows my habit, has ceased to talk, I pass the whole day in review before myself and repeat all that I've said and done. I conceal nothing from myself and omit nothing. For why should I be afraid of any of my shortcomings when it is in my power to say, I pardon you this time, see that you never do it anymore. The fifth principle that you could incorporate as part of your Stoic daily routine is something called a view from above meditation. Every once in a while, ponder your life as if it weren't your own, as if you were watching your life in the grand scheme of the cosmos from above. And you can incorporate this into your journaling practice, where you sort of look at your life and your place in your life and where you want to go as if you weren't you, as if you were someone else, as if you were like a being in the sky. And then give yourself advice, give yourself feedback from that view from above. With this perspective, you're no longer caught up in your own emotions and your own thoughts. You have a more pulled back look at where you are in the world, and with the grand scheme of things, with regards to all the suffering that's ever taken place over the course of the entire history of the universe. Where do you stand, and where are your sufferings in comparison? It feels less personal that way, and you can sort of see all the pieces that came together to allow you to have the mentality and the mindset and the strengths and the weaknesses that led you to today and that could guide you moving forward. Brian Tracy, in his book Maximum Achievement, who many of you who have been following me, you'd know Brian Tracy is one of my favorite writers in personal development. He says this same exercise. He says that every once in a while, hypothetically, imagine you're sort of some higher dimensional being on another galaxy, and you sort of crafted this birth, you sort of crafted this life and key events of this life from the perspective of allowing you to become the person you're supposed to be. And so you hypothetically give each activity and each event of your life a meaning that was supposed to lead you somewhere. Here's how Brian Tracy puts it. He says, As an exercise in awareness, start by imagining that before you were born, somewhere on the other side of the cosmos, you had evolved over many lifetimes to become a particular type of person with a particular set of qualities, interests, talents, and abilities. It doesn't matter what you think about the idea of reincarnation, this exercise is just that, an exercise with a point that will become clear. Continuing in this line of thought, imagine that you deliberately chose your parents, that you chose the situation you were born into and brought up in. You did this because at your stage of personal growth and evolution, there were specific lessons about yourself, about life, and about other people that you had to learn which you could not learn in any other way. When you have this sort of pulled back perspective, you can sort of decipher more meaning out of your life. You can sort of willfully choose to give the qualities that you've embodied a purpose, a significance, and it helps you give sort of advice to yourself on how you move forward. Now, this fifth principle might not be a part of a daily routine, but it's maybe weekly or every once in a while. Give yourself advice from this pulled back, hypothetical, bird's eye perspective. It really helps you, I don't know, detach from your emotions and move forward with more mental efficiency. It's an incredibly emboldening philosophy to help people conduct themselves in industries where things can get uncertain at times. And in uncertainty, it's best to come back and put your attention on things that are within your locus of control. And so those 5 habits are meditating on death, mentally rehearsing the challenges of the day and imagining that you're going to overcome those challenges, having a daily ethical mindness and just like really paying attention to the present as you go about your business, keeping an evening philosophical diary in which you track your mistakes, the things you did right and the things you missed, and lastly, looking at your life from a bird's eye perspective and sort of soliciting advice to yourself from that pulled back awareness. If you're new here, my name is Nikhil. This channel is for creatives and entrepreneurs and people who want to bring to life some sort of artistic endeavor or expression that doesn't exist yet. And in that regard, I like to talk about success principles that range from Eastern spirituality and Western productivity, because I found that the best results in my life have come when I've combined the esoteric with the sort of hands-on and tactical. So if that's something that resonates with you, definitely consider subscribing. If you like the video, please leave it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to connect with me further, you can follow me on Instagram. And with that being said, let us take on the habits and mindsets and discipline that allow us to focus on our locus of control and not get caught up with our emotions or the things that are out of our hands, because the people with that sort of mental efficiency, to them, greatness is absolutely coming. Cheers guys, I'll see you next time.